What's going on, guys? Alpha the Wizard back at it with another video. Today I'm going to be going over a Kashtira deck profile for the post Photon Hypernova support coming in February. So a lot of people may be really interested in playing this deck but not really sure how to build it or how the cards interact with each other. I did post a combo tutorial for you to go check out if you would like to see how the deck operates. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop into this. So starting things off, we definitely want to max out on Fenrir. We're playing a pure Kashtira build in this version, so definitely want to max out on 3 Fenrir and 3 Unicorn. So these are the best ones in the deck, and 3 Rise Heart. The best 9, I should say. This is the new one that's coming out. Any ones that say OCG are not in the TCG currently, but they will be released shortly. And then we do play one of the Kashtira Tearlaments one, and then one of the Scareclaw one. Now, a lot of people would just say, well, why don't you just play 2 of the Scareclaw one? It's a little bit better. Honestly, it does come up quite a bit where you can resolve both of these in one turn, and if you only have 2 of these, then you're not able to do that and fully extend like how you would want to. So I definitely think like 1 and 1 is okay of the weaker Kashtira ones. Some might even say you need a little bit more than just 1 and 1, but that just comes down to player preference. But yeah, and then we do have the three of the field spell just to help our engine get started faster. This is going to search a Kashtira monster. And then the new card, Kashtira Papyrus. This card is basically like an emergency teleport for the deck. It just lets you, if you control a Kashtira, summon another Kashtira from your deck with a different attribute in defense position. So this card is really, really, really good. And then we do want to max out on Birth and pure Kashtira, because you definitely want to see Birth more often than not. As many Kashtira cards as possible that go together, honestly. But Birth is probably like one of the better ones, but you always want to really search Papyrus off a Unicorn unless you open a handful of Kashtiras, because Birth just essentially can allow you to normal summon one without tributing, but then it's also a monster reborn from the grave or banished. Now, I do only play one of the traps. I don't play the other trap. I think the other trap is very mediocre. I think this one is a lot better. Basically, if a Kashtira XE monster's on the field, you can make both players banish monsters from their field face down so that they only control 1. But also, if this card is banished, you can target a Kashtira XZ and then add one of the monsters as material back to your hand. And then you have the option if you wanted to summon it. So this is really, really, really good, especially synergizing with the new Arise Heart card. But yeah, and then in this particular build, this is not fully optimized, but this is just a general build for you to reference. It is a pretty good build in testing, but we do want to max out on triple tactic tasking. Now, a lot of you might look at this card and say it's very mid, but I want you to just think about the scenarios. If you're playing against Tearlaments, they're almost always going to activate a monster effect. It doesn't have to be in the main phase, it's just a monster effect. And then this card allows you to set Prosperity, or you could set Talents, or you could even set Terraforming. So yeah, tasking I think is a mandatory choice in the main, just because they're always going to be interacting with you, especially if they're on tier. But then we do play 3 Prosperity just to help with the consistency. We definitely want to see these cards way more than we see the bottom half, but we do want to see the bottom half like a decent amount. So yeah, Prosperity just acts as more engine. But then of course we do have 2 triple tactic talents. You could max out on this, but I only play 2 just because it's really, really good this format, but also just being able to set it off tasking is really, really good. But if you open talents and tasking, it's just even more insane, because then you could just look at their hand if they like do something in the main, and then you could just set Prosperity. So just Prosperity, resolving both of these in one turn is just such a power play. But then of course the 1 Terraforming for the field spell just to help our engine get started faster. But then in this particular build, I'm expecting a lot of Tearlaments, so I am main decking 1 Necro Valley. Now this is just a tech option. You don't have to play Necro Valley in this deck, but there's in my opinion, no reason not to. You could side it in for going first. I can see justification for that, but this card is so good even going second against Tearlaments, unless they have Crime. But yeah, so I'm choosing to play Necro Valley. You could just play a third Talons if you wanted to, but I would recommend testing it. And then we do play 3 of the card that everybody fears most, Dimension Shifter, just because we don't really care about our graveyard that much in this deck. And then I do play 3 Ash Blossom in this build, just because Ash is very generic, and all of our Kashtiras are level 7. So we could just simply normal summon an Ash and use a Kashtira for Baron to Fleur. So yeah, Ash just has good inherent strategy if you wanted to make Baron. Plus it's just generically good against everything. This could be something else realistically and you could just not play the Baron. But that just comes down to how you think in testing. But then I do think 3 Imperm is pretty close to mandatory at this point, just because if there's going to be a lot of mirror matches and or tier elements in the format, Imperm is probably the best option. Now, the side deck looks a little scuffed, but I literally just put a bunch of one-ofs of potential options that you can play. So Lava Golem is very good in this deck because we don't always need our normal summon. We can just clear boards and then just really just do our thing. But usually you play one of the 2, Lava Golem or Nibiru. There is justification for playing Nibiru over Lava Golem. However, Lava Golem outs Rukalos way easier than Nibiru does. But yeah, it all comes down to how you want to build the deck, but these are just some options that you can play. And then a lot of OCG builds are starting to main deck Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, just because there's so much tier elements everywhere that playing 1 Kikalos in your extra deck is devastating, because you could just literally cherries them, and most people are playing 2 Kikalos in the OCG just because of this card, Diabolos Mindhacker. On your turn, you could detach a material, look at your opponent's extra deck and banish it face down, and then we also have Unicorn that basically does the same thing if they activate a monster effect. So yeah, there's good justification for playing cherries. We can just pick apart their extra deck really easy. But then there are decks like Droll and decks like Flundereeze and Dark World that will be in the format, so there's justification for playing Droll and Lockbird as well. Definitely wouldn't sleep on the idea. It might not be a bad option. And then one thing I pulled from the OCG is a lot of them are playing Book of Eclipse, mainly because Book of Eclipse is a very easy out to Arise Heart, which is basically a walking macrocosmos, and it can out basically our whole board. So if we're in a mirror match, we can just Book of Eclipse them and then try to get to a Zeus play and do a lot. And then same thing for Change of Heart and Mind Control. Now these cards have a little bit better utility in the deck than Book of Eclipse because we can set it with tasking. So imagine that. Tasking almost never comes out of the deck because we have so many good going second cards that we could put in and then just set off tasking. Yeah, so basically, that's the reason why we play Duster, and that's also the reason why we play Triple Tactic Talents. We're just citing the third one, but like I said, you could just take out the Necro Valley and play 3. But then Dark World is just Dark Ruler No More is such a powerful card to set off, or to search off of tasking, that I just think there's justification for having this at least as a one-of in your side, because you're essentially playing 4 copies if you only play 1. And then sometimes people might want to play Dimensional Fissure just because, it does inherently counteract tier elements. I wouldn't play this going second, so that's why I just have it here on the side. But you can side this in for going first in the tier matchup and probably wreak havoc on your opponent. And then there is, of course, the all-powerful Solemn Judgment. This is the type of deck that once we start getting established, it's very hard for the opponent to break the board, but if they do manage to start making power plays, we have Solemn Judgment that we can side in for going first. So they directly can't. But I don't necessarily think you quite need Solemn Judgment, it's just a good option that you can play. Now, one card that I would highly recommend is Appointer of the Red Lotus, because just for the simple fact, Triple Tactic Tasking almost guarantees that you can get to a pointer, almost always, because it is a one-of now, because it's at 1, but tasking, you're basically playing 4 appointers. And then also, that's another reason why there's justification where you might want to try D-Barrier. And then we do have Macrocosmos in here, just because it doesn't inherently synergize going first as well. Now moving on to the extra deck, this is where it can get a little spicy, but I have some good options for you here. Most of these decks are going to play 2 Arise Heart. Basically, this is the walking Macrocosmos, and if you've triggered Shangri-La this turn, you can just XYZ summon this using any Kashtira monster as material. So it's really, really good, and it also is an interruption by detaching 3. You could banish a card face down. But then, of course, we got the 2 Shangri-La. Definitely wouldn't cut down on this. This is like a mandatory 2 of, but 3 might be too much. And then Dracosac. Dracosac is really good for breaking boards because a lot of you that played back then when this card was heavily played, you can detach a material, summon 2 Mecha Phantom Beast tokens, and then you could tribute one of the tokens to like pop any card on the field. So it's really good at breaking boards. We mainly play the Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon for time reasons. Plus, it's also a really big rank 7. It's 2800. But also, yeah, it's almost just kind of how Masquerade is in Despia. Each time your opponent activates a card or effect, you deal 500 damage. So that can come up in simplified game states. And then Big Eye. We play Big Eye because this is single-handedly probably the best rank 7 for going second. We can literally just take a monster our opponent controls by detaching. And I mean, yeah, it can't. This card can't attack, but you're free to do whatever you want with their monster. So it's basically Snatch Steal. And then Diabolos Mindhacker. This card, in my opinion, is a central component to the deck because you can detach a material, banish any card from their extra deck face down. And then, the better part of the effect, in addition to that, is if a card your opponent owns and possesses is banished face down while you control this card, you could banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down equal to the number of face down banished cards. So you might even accumulate like 14 face down banish cards for your opponent throughout the course of the game, and then just having Diabolos, they have to banish 14 from their deck face down. That is so crazy. Now, this is a card that a lot of people probably won't play or don't play, but it's another option. I just wanted to give you as many options as possible. It does require 2+ level 7s, but once per turn, the first part don't really matter because we don't play a lot of darks. But you can detach a material from this card, target a card your opponent controls, destroy it, and then banish a card from your graveyard. I think this card isn't too bad because you can banish your own Papayas to pop one of their monsters and then add back a Kashtira. But honestly, Arise Heart's probably just better. Now, we only play Titanic Moth because this is a rank 7 that we can attack directly with. So anybody that's been playing for the past year and a half knows that that is very, very powerful because you can make Zeus. And we only play the Gaia Charger mainly to make Zeus with more materials. But yeah, so this is the rank 7 that we can attack directly with and easy access to Zeus. So I would recommend playing this if you're playing Kashtira. And then we don't play a whole lot of links in this deck, mainly because Rise Heart, we're almost always wanting to resolve our Rise Heart. And with that being said, this locks us in XYZs, so we're abusing rank 7s at this point. But there is justification for playing an Asa maybe. I have seen some other builds in the OCG play like Unicorn and Access Code, but you don't really need them. The deck is good enough on its own. But then I kind of went over why you would play Baron as well. The only tuners you would have would maybe be an Ash Blossom, but that's okay. And then if you don't play Ash, I wouldn't play Baron. And I just have a kit in here just as a flex reason, if you do decide to play cherries in the main or side. It's really good just being able to just counteract their extra deck. Being able to banish multiple cards, like if you cherries their kit and then you're able to mind hacker their Kaleido Heart and then you unicorn their Zeus, it's like they're just left with the bones and no skin of the deck. So, but yeah, so that's really it for this profile. I really hope you enjoyed this because this isn't an optimized version, but this is pretty close to it, I would say. This is the closest I'm gonna get right now. There might be some changes in the future like Ash Blossom or maybe a third Talents. But yeah, you kind of get the gist, and I hope this really helped you to be able to build Kashtira so you can test it for when these cards do come out. But yeah, I really hope you appreciate the value behind this content. Make sure you drop a like, comment, subscribe down below for more content, and I will see you in the next one.